Hey everyone and welcome to the channel. Today we have another kitchen knife project, but I'm trying to keep this one a little bit more traditional. So today we're going to be working on a more classic style Japanese Santoku. If that sounds like something you're into, hang around to see how this one turned out. For our steels today, we're going to be using 2 pieces of mild steel to form our outer jacket, along with 2 nickel shims and 2 pieces of 1084 high carbon steel for the core. The reason I'm using the 2 pieces for the core today is that the outer jacket material I have here is thicker than the pieces I have for my core, but if I double up the high carbon, that will be more than thick enough. With my stack together, I'll get them chucked up in the vise and run some beads of weld down the corners. With the stack together, I'll weld on a little bit of 1/2 inch square bar as a handle. With the makings of my billet together, I can get the forge lit and bring this one up to forge welding temperature. This one's a pretty straightforward forge weld. I've never had much trouble using sand Mai with nickel stock before. So I'll simply bring this one up to yellow heat and gently set the welds on the press. My billet's quite a lot narrower than my finished knife will be, so I'll change my approach angle from time to time to try and make this one taller and longer at the same time. And now it's time to bring in the tang. The reason I don't use 2 dies when I'm doing this is that the hydraulic press is inclined to bring the material into the center, whereas if you just use 1 die, it'll move the material all the way in one direction. But with the tang set, I can switch over to the round drawing dies and start making this one longer. And my heel's just a little bit short, but if I change my approach angle and start pulling down right on that corner on the edge of the die, this one should be no problem at all. And that's looking tall enough, so now I can just start pulling out the blade. I need just a little bit more height in the center of the blade, so I'll apply the same principle and keep moving along the cutting edge trying to pull that material down. And the really rough stretching out's done, so I can change back over to a flat dies and try and smooth everything out a little bit. I want to leave a little bit of the texture of the round dies in there as they're going to give us some little peaks in our finished sand Mai pattern. But at the moment, those valleys are just too deep, so we need to square this one up and flatten it all out. This somewhat resembles a knife, but now I can start refining that shape. I've managed to forge a bit of a curve into the blade, but if I just hold its spine against the anvil and hammer across the cutting edge, I should be able to flatten this one out. Now you can see here that the tang's a little bit bent down, but if I just hold it against the anvil and hit right where the bend is, it should straighten everything out. And it's back to the press to try and forge down the tang to be the thickness of the rest of the blade. And back to the anvil for the last few finishing taps to get everything where we need it. And this one can go into thermal cycle overnight. Now that doesn't look like much of a knife, but let's sort that out now. I'll lock it up in the vise, and with the wire wheel attached, I'll rip off all the forge scale. We do this to save a little life on belts, as that forge scale is super hard and it munches abrasives. Also, if there does happen to be any little forging marks left in the blade, I don't want anything loose in there that might fall off. I'm not really planning for this to have any forging marks, but hey, stranger things have happened. I'm no expert on Japanese chef's knives, but I made a lot of Santokus in my time. The most important things I think we need to hit are a really straight spine in line with the handle, a bull nose, and a reasonably flat cutting edge, with the tallest heel I can get. With our profile traced out on the stock, I'll pop over to the grinder to cut in the profile. All I'm really looking to do here is shape the steel down to my markings, and make sure I don't have any weird delaminations that could cause our steel to fail in the quench. But that's all looking pretty good, so I can chuck this one into the kiln to come up to critical temperature. Once it's nice and toasty, it can go into the quenching oil to harden. Even after doing this a lot of times, these 10 or so seconds that you're waiting for the steel to cool feels like an eternity. If a steel's going to fail, this is typically where it would happen. All you hear is a horrible ping, and all the work up until this point is basically a waste. But no ping today, so we can pop this back into the kiln to temper and come back to it tomorrow. It's the next day and everything looks like it stayed nice and straight overnight. Now we can jump over to the grinder. I'll start by centering in on what will become the cutting edge, which is pretty easy as I can just make out the lines from our 3 different material because of those little bits of nickel. I love grinding mild steel sand Mai. Because the outer jacket isn't hardened, these 36 grit belts just munch through the steel. It's inclined to stick a little, but it disappears so fast. And then start climbing up the bevel towards the spine. I want this one to be pretty thin behind the edge. I'm shooting for about half a mil or 20 thou. And that's looking pretty slick off the grinder, so I can get my handle pieces together. I'll start by cutting a chunk off my handle block and getting it into the mill. I did originally plan to pop a dowel into this handle, but I made it over Easter weekend and apparently everyone else wasn't working. So I'll pop this one together the way I normally would, by cutting a slot into the little part that will become the bolster area of the handle. It's really satisfying fitting these up off the mill. They just slide on so nicely. I've got myself a little piece of black Juma that I've also cut a slot into, and then the remainder of the wooden handle block. With all the handle pieces together, I'll get this one into the ferry. I'm not looking to do too much on this one as far as etching for depth. All I'm trying to do is give myself a bit of a matte grey base that I can build on later with the coffee. And you can really see those 3 layers. The nickel is looking nice and shiny, and we have a good amount of activity in the jacket material. After a little sneak peek, it's time to glue this one up. I'll mix up a little G-Flex and wait a sec. I need to wrap this one up. Hang on, I'll be right back. And there we go. Now I won't scratch it up when I clamp it. And the amateur hour continues. I didn't even have my shot centered properly, but I filled the handle cavity with a little epoxy, slid all the pieces together, and left it to sit overnight. Let's see if I can do a better job of filming tomorrow. The glue is all set up and we can get to work on this handle. I don't do many wire style handles, but I'm on a mission to see how good I can get these facets off the grinder. So I'll start by squaring the block up to the blade, and then I'll break the corners to form that octagonal shape. I should have waited for the dowel and done this as a bedded tang, but we're here now. With a little time and perseverance, I've got this one looking pretty straight. My facets aren't perfect. There is the tiniest swell in the middle of the handle and I really like the way it feels, but it does mean I have a little dip in the straight lines of the handle. But it'll be okay, I'm sure, so I can switch over to the 240 grit and clean everything up, followed by a 400. I gave it a little hand sand to fix up a few rogue scratches, and over to the buffer we go. I'm not chasing the highest shine in the world on this one. The whole idea is to have this one look a little more classic, but I can't seem to help myself. This rosewood burl takes a wicked shine, and it's polished up beautifully. And last step, into the coffee we go to make that high carbon core as dark as we can, and we're done. This was a really fun project. It was really nice to work on a style that's not in my wheelhouse. It's not perfect by any means, but I think it's close enough to be classed as traditional in style. Thanks for watching the video, everyone. If you liked it, please consider giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. See you on the next one!